Hello everyone, I am teacher Park Seni, the representative of Park Seni Mind Coaching. There are so many distractions and interruptions in education these days, so please excuse me if my voice isn't in the best condition. College students are really worried about their resumes and are spending a huge amount of money on them. According to research, they say they are spending 54 million won per person to build up their specs, so they are waging a huge war of attrition. And also, if you don't have money, you can't build your resume at all. I've heard that there are a lot of college students who feel this way and are really struggling. So I'd like to share a bit about how I spent my college years with many college students who are dealing with these concerns. It was already 22 years ago when I was a 21-year-old college student, and there was a very popular professor from a vocational college who was doing hypnosis on TV during a show called Red Sun. It was almost unheard of to become so famous in the country through hypnosis, so I really wanted to meet that person because I had been studying and practicing hypnosis on my own since I was a very young elementary school student. I often experimented with it on my friends. I would clap my hands to make it so my friends couldn't move their feet, and they were really amazed by it. I was that kind of student who felt a bit proud of myself. But I was so envious of how famous that hypnotist was that I called him up. I called and asked if he could meet me just once. He said he would meet me just once. So I was really grateful, but then he said right away, "I'll meet you for 10 hours, so bring 1.3 million won." At that moment, I felt a bit defeated. How am I going to come up with that money? And back then, 1.3 million won was a lot of money to the student. So after thinking about it for a while, I did a lot of tutoring and even did some manual labor. After trying it for 3 days in a row, I really felt like all my muscles were all knotted up, so I couldn't do it for more than 3 days. But I managed to gather that considerable amount of 1.3 million won in a short period by juggling various part-time jobs. So I went to meet the famous hypnotist and spent the money. I ended up learning for 10 hours. During the last hour of the 10-hour session, I realized that the knowledge I had wasn't really that different from what this person had. I started to think, what makes me any less capable than him? So, back in the early days of the internet, I posted an advertisement there. If I teach you hypnosis for 5 hours, you will be able to hypnotize others, and I can also help you get rid of any symptoms of civil disorder that you have, or any symptoms that are caused by something wrong in your unconscious mind. The most common request I get is, please help me quit smoking. It seems like people have always struggled a lot with smoking, both back then and now. So I didn't have a place to go. There were no centers, and it was a time when my father only had debts. So when someone called, I would visit their home. And for self-employed people, I can go to their center or shop to provide guidance. So that's how I ended up going to people's homes or businesses. I would go and teach for 5 hours, passing on the core principles and techniques of hypnosis, and I helped them with their issues, starting from quitting smoking to headaches and everything in between. I usually said I would provide 5 hours of guidance and charge 200,000 won, which wasn't a small amount. At that time, I said I would guide for 5 hours, but I actually ended up giving a bit more. Sometimes it would even be around 6 hours, and occasionally it would stretch to 7 hours. In fact, this is one of the easiest ways to truly impress customers. Just do a little more than what you promised. People don't really do that. Successful people have a habit of doing a bit more work than what they're compensated for. Fortunately, I developed the habit of giving a little extra time from a young age, which really impressed my clients and made them express their gratitude towards me. As I was doing that, I started to wonder if I really needed to teach just one person at a time. So I started to feel confident that I could handle about 3, 4, or even 5 people at once. I grew up in Seongnam-dong, Gangdong-gu, and there was this old, musty, not so great apartment building near my house where my maternal grandparents lived until they passed away. So, in one of those rooms, I would gather older adults, about 4 or 5 of them, and set it up on the weekends to teach them all at once. I was able to earn 800,000 won in a day, and sometimes even 1,000 won. In a really short period, I made over 15 million won, which was quite a significant amount back then. So I gained an incredible amount of confidence at that time. I've always loved reading books since I was little, but when I share them with adults, they are so touched and thankful, and even give me money It makes me feel like I've been reborn, and it's so great. So I started to love books even more. I really focused hard and read books with my eyes wide open. And I think there was this thought that settled in my mind. Let's try explaining it to even stronger individuals than these people. So what will happen with these thoughts in mind, I kept working hard and honing my knowledge. By the time I was 27, I started explaining to the directors of entrance exam prep academies what kind of classes I would offer, and I was able to connect with them, living quite well in this field. So if you really think about it, this thing called specs seems like just a small area of study, but with just hypnosis, I was able to explain it to adults one by one, bringing them in, and using various marketing techniques. I managed to earn about 15 million won. Quite simply, you can do this, even without money. What it means is building your specs. And I often ask students, especially college students, what they think specs are, but they usually get stuck and can't answer. TOEIC, scores, a few certifications, GPA, and which school you graduated from. These are the kinds of specs that are mostly stuck in the minds of college students. To explain it precisely, specs are essentially proof of the level of influence you've had on others. If you can demonstrate that, that's considered the most recognized spec in the world. If you look at South Korea right now, how much do you think students spend on building their specs according to surveys? A few years ago, it was said that 43 million won was spent, and recently, if I remember correctly, I heard that up to 54 million won was spent per person to build up qualifications, and that a huge amount of money was spent on language training and studying abroad. In this society, there are quite a few people who keep insisting that resumes are important, which really makes students anxious. For example, they say that certain speeches are important. It's not that the speech isn't important, but if the content of the speech is too sloppy and worthless, no matter how much you ramble on, it won't have any influence on others. If you touch on some important key points and drop in some essential stories, successful people will show more interest in those students and recognize them as more talented. So, I hope you don't join this stupid parade anymore. Pouring money like this unconditionally and letting others steal your money and influence is absolutely not building up your specs. The more money you get ripped off by others, the more anxious you become, and the more you want to give them, and that only makes you that kind of person. Even now, try to gain experiences in the field you're studying or researching, where you can explain things to others, inspire them, and if possible, even earn some money from it. Those actions that have accumulated one by one and have had a real influence on others have gathered and become a big thing. It will ensure that you can clearly prove to even the most remarkable individuals that you are indeed a talent. And you can't build a resume if you don't have money. You understood that this part is not the case, right? Even when your father has over 200 million won, just having a small area of expertise, like being a newcomer, can spark curiosity in people and keep them interested. If there's no place to meet, you can go to your home and with courage and conviction, take it step by step. If you do that, people will recognize your efforts and even reward you with money. So don't make excuses, just take action. Action is the only answer. To do that, you need to acquire more thorough and proper knowledge. Try to commercialize the knowledge you have and make an impact on others, even if you don't have much money to start with. You can begin with whatever resources you have. I hope that you will build up your true qualifications and become a talented person who can pioneer your own cool field. That's all for today. Thank you.